We have some major breaking news, and it's the news that we have been dreading. Unfortunately, House Republicans just cheered and celebrated as the big ugly bill was passed. It passed through the Senate and is now officially passed through the House. I want to provide a surgical dissection of everything wrong with this bill, of why Republicans are spineless. We're even going to go through with a notepad and just make sure everybody understands why this bill should not be passed. As we see right here, massive Medicaid cuts and health coverage losses, job losses, and economic harm. The bill passing is an overall travesty for the country. Let me plug my phone in really quickly. We are currently live streaming both on YouTube, both on Substack, and yes, it did officially pass in the House. If you're watching this live, make sure to drop a like. Make sure to subscribe. If you're watching this after the fact and you never want to miss a stream again, you can subscribe below. But let's continue breaking this down. This is the moment that Republicans began to cheer as it passed.
Did vote yes.
The yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted.
The USA chants don't fit when this is perhaps the most anti-American bill that could possibly ever be passed. A bill that helps the working class would be a pro-USA bill. A bill that doesn't cut food assistance, cut SNAP, only increase taxes for, working class people. Look at this clip right here. One second. Here is Republican Mike Lawler being asked, do you think this could come back to bite Republicans?
44 minutes. Do you think that this could come back to bite Republicans next November by any chance?
No. Look, once the American people understand everything that is in the bill, as opposed to what the Democrats have been trying to tell them is in the bill, they are going to support the largest tax cut that they've seen. The fact is, had we not passed this bill, you would have had the largest tax increase in American history.
That is not true, and Fox News debunks him right after by asking the right question. He says this is a big win for Americans across the country, but then the Fox News host asked the right question. The tax cuts for lower class people are temporary, right? They expire. Meanwhile, the tax cuts for the richest of the rich are permanent. Take a listen.
$86 trillion over the next decade. This bill starts to make significant savings across the entirety of the federal government so that we can actually reduce spending and bring down the cost of living for Americans. This is a big win for Americans across the country. You look at the tax provisions, the doubling of the standard deduction, the enhanced child tax credit, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. You see...
Well, those will expire in 2028, correct? Those provisions specifically on tax?
Within the tax code, but that's normal. The tax code has always had expiration dates on many provisions. We come back and keep working towards it.
The problem is the provisions that expire are only tailored towards lower and middle class people, which is disgusting. It's kind of like taunting people with a short-term $100 bill and saying, look, we gave you money, but then behind the scenes, you're ripping thousands of dollars away from them. It is absolutely disgusting. We need to keep talking about the midterms. That's the messaging that really matters. And I want to use this live stream to do a surgical dissection of everything wrong with the bill. We will go through what Republicans have said. We'll go through what the bill actually says, what Trump has said about it, the lies that he's told about it, so that we're all equipped to talk about this and message about this in a proper way. Now, here's the thing. If we aren't coordinated in the messaging, I think that it'll be a missed opportunity to reconsolidate power. Someone in chat said, I just joined. Did it actually pass? Yep, the bill actually passed. Let me pull up the main article. Let's see the CNN article. This is how Trump's mega bill will affect you. Seniors, students, taxpayers, children, parents, low-income Americans, and just about everyone else will be affected by the massive tax and spending bill being hashed out in real time that just passed. People on Medicaid will lose coverage. For Medicaid enrollees, the biggest impact would be to the new work requirement. So as we're filling this in on the YouTube, we're going to be making sure that we actually fill in the talking points. Medicaid work requirements are harmful and do not work. They have been tried in the state of Arkansas and had adverse effects. And we can look this up. Let me just look up. We can look up the study. It's important that we do this. Look at this, just a quick search. Arkansas implemented a work requirement for certain individuals receiving Medicaid benefits, but it was later put on hold by a federal judge. The policy, known as Arkansas Works, required able-bodied adults aged 30 to 49 to work 80 hours per week or participate in other qualifying activities to maintain coverage. The policy was supposed to have the end result of increasing overall labor in the state, increasing the workforce in the state, yet it had the opposite effect. It had adverse effects. In fact, a lot of the most vulnerable populations could not even jump over the hurdles that they put in place to then get the work requirements. So imagine you're already somebody disabled, struggling to get by, and what the Trump admin does is they directly add more hurdles in the way. It's despicable. 80 hours per month. Yep. Did I say week? But to continue, in 2018, Arkansas became the first state to enact this requirement. Did I say week? I meant month. My bad. That was my bad. So the point is, what I was trying to write down is, they've been tried and had adverse effects. Arkansas tried this, and many of the most vulnerable communities were locked out. The point is, the 80 hours a month wasn't the point. It's the fact that when they increased these new barriers, what it did is it made it harder for already disabled people or vulnerable populations to jump through these hoops, and they lost their Medicaid. Yeah, someone in chat said it's not hard to work 80 hours a week, but yeah, it's not hard if you're not disabled, says Caroline. Of course, that's true. But to continue here, overall, Medicaid enrollees could face other changes. I mean, really quickly, people in chat are still arguing, so let's read this. Efforts to impose work requirements are motivated by the assumption that many adults with Medicaid are actually healthy enough to work but choose not to, and that conditioning Medicaid eligibility on employment would provide them the incentives to join the labor force. So in 2018, Arkansas became the first state to establish a work requirement for adults enrolled through its Medicaid expansion program, starting with 30 to 49-year-olds. 1 second. All right, we're back. Sorry. The mailman knocked on my door and it scared the shit out of me. Okay, to continue. In 2018, Arkansas became the first state to establish this work requirement for adults enrolled through its Medicaid expansion program. Ooh, catch my breath. Automatic exemptions were granted for parents living with dependent children and certain other groups. The requirement led to the disenrollment of more than 18,000 adults over 4 months before a 2019 federal court had to stop them. Look at this. The people in chat were saying we should be able to increase Medicaid work requirements. Not everyone. Some Trump supporter in chat said work requirements should be increased. But just read this. When you increase work requirements, it doesn't increase the amount of people working. It leads to more barriers. This new requirement led to the disenrollment of more than 18,000 adults. Using data from telephone surveys of adults with low income in Arkansas and 3 comparisons in the South, Harvard University researchers found the work requirements were associated with an increase in uninsurance. It had zero positive effect on employment. What they're trying to achieve is not going to be achieved with this. By the way, if you guys are just jumping in, make sure you drop a like on the stream. Help boost this message. We are currently live both on Substack and on YouTube. We are making a mega document of everything to do with this bill that's, all the negatives. So we're going to make this bill, or we're going to make this document with all of the negatives. Then what we're going to do is put it on the Substack. So go subscribe to the Adam Mockler Substack, the newsletter. Again, right here, Mike Lawler was asked, these expire, right?
Today to pass one of the largest tax relief bills in American history, increase domestic production of energy, secure our borders, strengthen our military, and start to rein in the size and scope of the federal government. We are $36 trillion in debt. We're projected to spend $86 trillion over the next decade. This bill starts to make significant savings across the entirety of the federal government so that we can actually reduce spending and bring down the cost of living for Americans. This is a big win for Americans across the country. You look at the tax provisions, the doubling of the standard deduction, the enhanced child tax credit, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. You see...
those will expire in 2028, correct? Those provisions specifically on tax?
Within the tax code, but that's normal. The tax code has always had expiration dates on many provisions. We come back and keep working towards it.
Again, it's not normal. Let me just be clear about what's not normal about this. What's happening is they are putting temporary tax breaks for middle and lower class individuals. These temporary tax breaks, it's like a $100 bill on a string. You guys know that bit I'm talking about where they put a $100 bill on a string and it's like you're about to get the tax break. Meanwhile, if you make millions of dollars a year, you get a permanent tax break. And their theory is that these tax breaks will eventually trickle down to the people who are getting the temporary tax breaks. But trickle down doesn't work. Trickle down economics doesn't work. I want to ask, do we have any Trump supporters in the chat who support this bill? We could actually pull people in. Yeah, the carrot and the stick, exactly. Do we have any MAGA supporters who support this bill in the chat? I would be very curious to hear about that. Make sure you drop a like, everybody, on the stream. Look at this clip of Mike Johnson a few years back.
Nation right now is our debt. It's not China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea, it's the debt. And we take that very seriously. Congress has kicked the can down the road for decades, and we're out of road. The number one threat to our nation right now is our debt. It's not China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea, it's the debt. And we take that very seriously. Congress has kicked the can down the road for decades.
Do you take it very seriously? You just passed one of the craziest debt increases in modern American history. I mean, here's the thing. When we type out this list of everything wrong with the bill, which I think is a good idea, right? In chat, do you think we should sit here and just type out everything wrong with this? First of all, massive Medicaid cuts and health coverage losses. Medicaid work requirements are harmful and do not work. Let's actually start with a more fundamental thing. Republicans theorize that Medicaid work requirements will incentivize... Why can't I spell that right? Incentivize to return to work. Sorry, I'm typing a bit fast. This has been tried and has been proven to not work. Again, why don't we just cite this? Let's just cite this study right here. New evidence confirms Arkansas's Medicaid program doesn't work. The requirement led to a disenrollment of more than 18,000 adults. I'm sorry, but when a big, ugly bill passes, we're going to do some schoolwork after and talk about why this big, ugly bill is ugly. Okay. When does the bill become active? Let me see. Yeah, the House just passed it. But the Senate had already passed it, so it is officially passed. The eligibility requirements and funding reductions for Medicaid and SNAP will begin to roll out within 60 days of enactment, with full implementation by the starting date of next fiscal year. But let's do some work about this. If you're just joining, the big ugly bill has officially passed. Listen to Republicans chanting USA afterwards.
Did vote yes.
Yeah, Trump still has to sign it.
The yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted.
They start chanting USA. Trump is likely going to sign it on the 4th. Now, after he signs it on the 4th, the Medicaid and SNAP rollouts begin to be cut within 60 days, and then again by next fiscal year, a lot of it will fully kick in. But as they chant USA, this is perhaps one of the most un-American bills possible, and we're writing down why. So first of all, the massive Medicaid cuts just don't work. Republicans theorize that Medicaid work requirements will incentivize people who are gaming the system to work more. I'm just going to say in bold, this is false. This has been tried on a state level and has been proven to have the opposite effect. Then I'm going to say, in Arkansas, for example, Medicaid work requirements were put into place in 2018, and cut out vulnerable communities due to increased, let me bold this, increased barrier of entry and increased paperwork, etc. And check this out. Then we can just directly cite, boom, boom. The requirement led to the disenrollment of more than 18,000 adults over 4 months before a 2019 federal court ruling halted further implementation. I guess we might see something happen on a broader level here, but the point is, in 2018, Arkansas became the first state to establish a work requirement for adults, 30 to 49-year-olds, and that's basically what we're seeing with this exact bill. $1 trillion, 10 to 17 million Americans could lose health insurance. The lower estimate is 10 million. Medium estimates are 14 million. Upper estimates are 17 million. And again, it's just sickening. Let's continue to see
what their skill sets are, and I know what they bring to the table, and I get up every day excited because I know that each of them are going to bring that to the table, and they're going to serve their constituents. You could not have a greater group of public servants than the people standing in this room right here.
I beg to... You couldn't have a greater group than the people standing in the room? Really, this is the best you can do. The dude who tracks his porn with his son, that's the best you can possibly do. Let's talk about the job losses too, the broader economic impact, because I mean, we could spend a whole live stream on each of these sections. For people just joining, let me run it back for 1 second. You're watching the Adam Mockler live stream. The House unfortunately just passed a bill that we can prove, we can demonstrate is harmful for America. After the House passed it, Trump now has to sign it. He'll likely sign it on the 4th of July for symbolic reasons, which is tomorrow. And once he signs it, over the next 60 days, Americans will begin to lose access to healthcare. Jobs will be cut, and we are going to demonstrate that based on previous examples of these things happening. We're not just making stuff up. We don't just come on here and make shit up. We are reading studies that show that these have not worked on state levels. What about the healthcare sector job losses? Let's start this. Let's start here. By the numbers, the Republican ugly bill would have devastating impacts on New York healthcare providers, patients, employees, and communities. $14.4 billion in lost hospital-generated economic activity, resulting from $8 billion in cuts. 65,000 jobs lost. A Yale/Penn study estimates cuts could result in 51,000 preventable deaths annually. Wait a minute. We can actually just read this. Let's read the source. Penn LDI, the Leonard Davis Institute of Health. Dear ranking members, thank you for your inquiry about the potential mortality impacts that would result from this House-passed budget reconciliation bill. We project that the implementation of the retractions outlined in this bill would result in more than 42,500 deaths annually. This includes 11,300 deaths from the loss of Medicaid or Affordable Care Act marketplace coverage due to 7.7 million people losing coverage, 18,200 deaths due to the loss of Medicaid coverage among 1.38 million low-income Medicare beneficiaries. What's up? Okay. 13,000 deaths among Medicaid enrollees in nursing homes due to the rollback of CMS 2024 nursing home minimum staffing rule. Thank you so much for the donation, Will Sonics. Thanks for providing the truth. Thank you for being here. We are going down to the source material. This is a study done by Yale. The Yale School of Public Health did a study about this bill, and what we're doing is creating a document, basically like a mega document. Oops. What this mega document is going to do is provide an outline on Substack. Like, check this out. If we just keep citing these sources, we project that the implementation could result in more than 42,500 deaths annually. And where did this come from again? This Yale School of... One second, let me pull this back up. The Yale Penn study. Boom, boom. Yale Penn study estimates that 42,500 deaths will be caused annually due to this bill. Okay. So just to recap, since this bill passed, Mike Johnson said the number one threat to our nation a few years ago was the debt.
The number one threat to our nation right now is our debt. It's not China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea, it's the debt. And we take that very seriously. Congress has kicked the can down the road for decades, and we're out of road. The number one threat.
What an absolute liar. Zero ideological guardrails. Really quickly, in chat, you'll see the link to where I'll be posting this document once we're done writing it. So far, we have this. The massive Medicaid cuts broken down. Here's the thing. A lot of commentators will say they're cutting Medicaid, and it's true, but here's the actual breakdown of the arguments, and we'll continue to go deeper. So Republicans theorize that if you increase Medicaid work requirements, that will incentivize people who are gaming the system to work more. This is false. This has been tried on a state level and has been proven to have the opposite effect. In Arkansas, for example, Medicaid work requirements were put into place in 2018 and cut out vulnerable communities due to increased barrier of entry, increased paperwork, etc. This reads, quote, the requirement led to the disenrollment of more than 1,800 adults over 4 months before a 2019 federal court ruling halted further implementation. A further Yale Penn study estimates 42,500 deaths will be caused annually due to this bill. We have the study up. 11,000 from loss of Medicaid, 18,000 from loss of coverage among low-income beneficiaries, 13,000 deaths here. To calculate these, we used peer-reviewed estimates of the relationship between mortality and loss of Medicaid coverage for adults, loss of Medicaid coverage for low-income Medicare beneficiaries, and rescinding minimum nursing home staffing levels. Holy. Substack is basically a newsletter, the Adam Mockler newsletter. We also have a Reddit. Whatever platform you're on, I urge you to go follow the Adam Mockler channel. We have a Reddit. We have a Substack. We have Instagram, Twitter. Post a lot on YouTube. But to continue here, they dance, you die. They're dancing after this bill was passed. They dance while you die. Can I also point out the simple fact that President Biden had passed 2 pieces of landmark legislation by this point in his term? The American Rescue Plan in 2021, which was $1.9 trillion, direct payments to Americans, unexpanded benefits if you're unemployed, expanded benefits if you're unemployed, not unexpanded, child tax credit expansion. It helped people. What about this? He then passed the bipartisan infrastructure law. Sorry, I keep stuttering. $1.2 trillion investments in roads, bridges, railways. This was all at this point in Biden's term. Biden had passed multiple pieces of landmark legislation. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is struggling to pass even a fraction of that. Even a fraction. He then passed the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, landmark pieces of legislation where he got both sides to come together. Lacey said, Medicaid pays for majority of mental coverage. Yep. They will dance now, then weep when they lose in the midterms. Yep, Game Brett. Yo, this is pretty cool. Daydom said, I haven't been here live yet. Well, welcome to the first Adam Mockler live stream. If you've never been to one, make sure you're subscribed with the notifications on below so you don't miss it. Really quickly, while I have you all, I made this YouTube channel. Did you guys know that I made this YouTube channel that you're watching when I was 9 years old? I used to post videos on this channel when I was 9, like these dumb Minecraft videos that I used to make. But I got really, really good at editing the videos. And then what happened is after I got good at editing, I would also debate my teacher in 5th grade. I've told the story a few times. I got kicked out of class for debating my teacher in 5th grade on like gay marriage. And then when I graduated high school, I realized, wait, I have all these video editing skills. I have a YouTube channel that I can revive. I have debate skills. Why don't I just go to Trump rallies and combine them? And that's how we started to, get here. So sorry for the side tangent. I just want to talk about the backstory a bit more. These people just stole the public's health care. Yep. Mike Lawler just voted to cut Medicaid benefits for millions of people. Here's some tweets promising not to do that. Nothing wrong with playing Minecraft? No, not at all. I would still play if I had the time. When I got into high school, I didn't have the time to play video games anymore. And then when I graduated, I realized, holy shit, I can still edit and do all this together. So then, like one day before a Trump rally that was 7 hours out, I grew up in Indiana. There was a Trump rally in Iowa. Ironically, there's one in Iowa today too. But I drove out and I met this cameraman. I met the cameraman the day of the shoot. Now, 2 years later, I still use it. It's cameraman Nate. I met cameraman Nate when I was like 20 years old, had 0 subscribers. 0 subscribers. So it's wild. To continue. Republicans are out here sane-washing and lying about this bill. How can they lie to the American people so brazenly? So incredibly brazenly. Okay. To continue, this Yale study estimates that 42,500 deaths could occur due to losses of Medicaid. Let's see right here. Trump's big ugly bill is a loss for housing. The tax bill includes a significant expansion of the low-income housing tax credit. However, its other provisions, especially cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, are so harmful that the affordable housing field should not be celebrated. This is insane. $3 trillion bills, devastating cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, enacted to free up funds for tax cuts for the ultra-rich, would bring about widespread job loss and a surge in poverty caused by the number of people who cannot afford housing, causing the number of people who cannot afford housing to soar. The Commonwealth Fund, an independent research organization, estimates that okay, let's actually read the study. We're going to read the actual studies. Like, you know what I'm wondering? If I go on YouTube really quickly, you know what I always wonder? On a day like this, what is someone like Benny Johnson cover? Sorry, that was really loud. Look at this absolute slop. He made a video of Trump laughing AI, and it says Democrats sabotage themselves. A video of Diddy and 50 Cent AI. What the fuck? And why is Diddy holding a pride flag? Internet horrified as Kathy Griffin appears unrecognizable. See, like, why are these right-wing YouTubers covering the most slop, terrible topics? Who cares about Kathy Griffin? I mean, a lot of people do. I don't mean it like that. Like, people care about this stuff. But at the very moment, Lord have mercy. Okay, the point I was trying to make is, while they're covering this, we're going to continue to read the actual source material, like the Yale studies, the studies from Yale that show how this is happening. So this is a Commonwealth Fund study, an independent group, and this reads, states are facing deep cuts in federal funding and Medicaid in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, used to be called food stamps, as envisioned by a U.S. House of Representatives budget resolution. These could include $880 billion in Medicaid cuts, they did include that, and $230 billion in SNAP cuts over 10 years. To estimate the impact of broad-based funding reduction in Medicaid and SNAP for all 50 states and the District of Columbia, assuming that cuts would be distributed evenly, that was the goal. The key findings. Well, first of all, the methods. The economic modeling system was used to project the effects of states' economies, employment, and taxes. Key findings. Combined losses from proposed Medicaid and SNAP cuts would reach $1.1 trillion over a decade, including a $95 billion loss of federal funding in 2026 alone. State GDPs would be $113 billion lower, exceeding federal budget savings. Okay, that's a really important stat right there for the document. State GDPs would be $113 billion lower, exceeding federal budget savings, meaning this is actually quite inefficient. And this is what I'd say. Rather than looking at this, what the hell? One second. Rather than looking at this through the lens of waste, fraud, and abuse, we should be looking at this through the lens of return on investment. ROI. The reason I say that is because why are we saying that the $113 billion is going to save us money when that $113 billion is going to... Sorry, why are we saying that it's going to save us a bunch of money when we're going to lose more in the GDP? Here's an example. I pay a firm to help me with my PR, and it cost me, let's just say, for example, I'm not going to say the actual number, but let's say the firm cost me $1,000 a month, and it helps me get PR. I'm spending that $1,000, and I make off of these PR opportunities, like going on TV or whatever, I make $2,000. Now, when I'm auditing my business at the end of the month, I could see, I'm spending $1,000 on PR. That's really dumb. That's really expensive. That's a lot of money. But then what you want to look at is, what are you making in return? What's the return on that investment? The point here is, when you're cutting Medicaid from so many people, you can look at the raw savings, but what is the long-term damage? If you're saving $60 billion, but you're losing $113 billion in GDP, you're not getting a return on investment. It's the same thing with USAID. We were spending, I think it was $63 billion a year on USAID, but the disease prevention saved us hundreds of billions of dollars. Yes, $60 billion a year is a lot, but you know what's more expensive is $300 billion in global deaths. So when you spend $60 billion and you are saving $100 billion, that's good. In the same way that when I pay a PR firm $1,000, yes, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. But that also makes me a return, hypothetically. And for businessmen and businesswomen, Republicans really don't seem to understand any of this whatsoever. But again, if you're just joining the stream, we're creating a document where we're researching the bill, and the document will be available in chat if you just go to the following link. A lot of people in chat are saying MAGA. Oh, I'm sorry, you MAGA. If you're saying MAGA, you're probably in a red state. If you're in a red state, you're going to be disproportionately hit by these. You know, rather than arguing, let's just continue to read the facts, the actual facts. Continue. The Commonwealth Fund, an independent research org, which we actually visited the website of, did a study. The combined cuts represent more than $1.1 trillion. Reports by other analysts have illustrated possible implications of Medicaid and SNAP proposals, such as cutting the number of program participants or slashing their health benefits or food purchasing power. These find that program cuts could jeopardize people's health, increase hunger, and exacerbate hardships for hundreds of millions of families. That sounds like a perfect moment for Republicans to celebrate and cheer. USA, we love the fact that this will exacerbate hunger, increase hardships for those with children, pregnant women, seniors, people with disabilities. Let's go. There is nothing like the American dream. The American dream of, wait, let me find it. Let me find a statistic I can put in there. Someone said, Adam, we get it. Nobody cares on the right. That's not even, that's removed from the point I'm making. We're reading a statistic right here. Although Medicaid, one second. Although Medicaid and SNAP provide vital coverage and food assistance to impoverished Americans, the direct recipients of Medicaid payments and SNAP benefits are the healthcare providers, hospitals, doctors' offices, pharmacies, and nursing homes, among others, as well as grocery and other food stores. Cuts in federal funding for Medicaid and SNAP shrink revenue for those businesses and their employees, and the effects ripple across other businesses and workers in their supply chains, such as medical equipment suppliers, food producers, and farms. The affected businesses are forced to respond by reducing staffing, salaries, and purchases of other goods and services. It's just an absolute mess. Let's go see what the Twitter feed looks like. Warning, random things may pop up on Twitter. Sometimes Twitter is the wild, wild west nowadays, so.
Look, I think a lot of the estimations about what this legislation would do in a negative manner to communities in my state or any other are far overblown. I can tell you that this bill is going to be a great thing for everybody around the country, my constituents especially. What's good for Louisiana is good for America. We've got great tax policy here. I think they're going to feel this pretty quickly. Wages will rise.
It's so good for their own constituents that many Republicans had to have specific exemptions for their states. Lisa Murkowski, for example, was like, yo, I love this bill, but just not for my state. Not for my state. It will not get me reelected. Like, come on. Someone in chat said, yay, more tax cuts for the rich. Exactly. And that's only half of it. There's permanent tax cuts for the rich and then temporary tax cuts for working class people. So don't fall for the bait and switch. I want to make sure that I'm like clear about the bait and switch they're pulling. I said earlier it's like the carrot on the stick, where they give permanent, long-lasting tax cuts to the richest of the rich. Meanwhile, working class people only get temporary tax cuts that expire in a few years. Here is Republican Mike Lawler admitting this exact thing on Fox News right after the vote.
Obviously, the party came together today to pass one of the largest tax relief bills in American history, increase domestic production of energy, secure our borders, strengthen our military, and start to rein in the size and scope of the federal government. We are $36 trillion in debt. We're projected to spend $86 trillion over the next decade. This bill starts to make significant savings across the entirety of the federal government so that we can actually reduce spending and bring down the cost of living for Americans. This is a big win for Americans across the country. You look at the tax provisions, the doubling of the standard deduction, the enhanced child tax credit, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. You see...
Well, those will expire in 2028, correct? Those provisions specifically on tax?
Within the tax code, but that's normal. The tax code...
Listen to what he just said. Those will expire.
The doubling of the standard deduction, the enhanced child tax credit, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. You see...
Well, those will expire in 2028, correct? Those provisions specifically on tax?
Within the tax code, but that's normal. The tax code has always had expiration dates on many provisions. We come back and keep working towards it. But the objective here is to...
It's just a bait and switch. It's a complete bait and switch. Again, I'm dual streaming both on the Substack for the newsletter and the Adam Mockler YouTube. Go to adammockler.com to get access to this document when we release it. This document is going to be a mega doc breaking down this entire bill and how absolutely awful it is. Republicans think that Medicaid work requirements help. They don't. State GDPs will be $113 billion lower, exceeding federal budget savings, meaning this is actually quite inefficient. Rather than looking at this through the lens of waste, fraud, and abuse, we should be looking at this through the lens of return on investment. What kind of ROI will we be getting for this? But to continue, this was a study that we were reading. Below, we present a summary of the economic, employment, and budget impacts of Medicaid and SNAP cuts. If Medicaid funding is cut by $880 billion over 10 years, which it will be, this was written hypothetically like a week ago, the amount that all states receive from the federal government would be 11.8% less than what they would get without any cuts. If cuts are evenly spread across the decade, $72.4 billion in funding would disappear nationwide in 2026, and losses would rise over the remainder of the decade. The impact on state economies would be greater than the loss of federal Medicaid funding. This is because of the ripple effect of the cuts. So, if they're saving $72 billion, but they are losing $113 billion, the states are screwed. Thank you, Indirect. It's not just red states that suffer under Trump's regime. It's also red counties and blue states. A perfect example is the recent catastrophic flooding. It's also just all counties. It's blue counties and red states, blue counties and blue states, red count. I had a kind of tongue-in-cheek thing earlier when a MAGA supporter popped in chat. I said, hey, if you're in a red state, you're going to be double effed. But no, everybody is going to be screwed. And that's the sad reality of it.
The Republican Party stands for law and order, and this is the side that stands with law enforcement, the brave men and women who are on the front line.
Except January 6th, except Brian Sicknick, except all of the people you pardoned for beating police officers. always have to put that music in there? Here's Stutzman saying, are you concerned hospitals will close? This is a Republican on the Financial Services Committee.
Given reductions in federal spending for some states, though, are you concerned at all that rural hospitals may wind up closing? We've heard from workers at many of them who believe that.
Yeah, sorry. They play the song YMCA while they sign a bill that will close the YMCAs.
Given reductions in federal spending for some states, though, are you concerned at all that rural hospitals may wind up closing? We've heard from workers at many of them who believe that they may not be able to stay open. Can you guarantee that this bill won't shut down hospitals in rural communities?
Yeah, I don't believe it will at all. In fact, you know, one of the things that we do know is like states like California, they take about $160 billion a year in reimbursements through Medicaid. That number alone is larger than the entire state budget of Florida. There are several states that...
I don't know what kind of weird math comparison is done here. Okay, so California is a state that backpacks the rest of the country's economy. By backpacks, I mean they carry it on their back. California could be an economy on its own that rivals the largest countries. Why are you comparing California's Medicaid intake with Florida's, like, GDP? I don't get it, number one. Number two, we just read this study that shows, I just made this point, just 1 second ago, I made this point. Just by throwing out the number, what was it, 113 billion, wait, what number was it?
States like California, they take about $160 billion.
Okay, they take 160 billion, but by cutting this, are you going to cost 290 billion? Which number is bigger? If you cost 290 billion, it's not worth saving the 160 billion. It's called return on investment. It's called minimizing, like harm reduction, essentially. The harm reduction principle.
Here in reimbursements through Medicaid, that number alone is larger than the entire state budget of Florida. There are several states that continue to overutilize.
So California has a larger budget than Florida? Or its Medicaid intake is larger than Florida? That sounds like a win for California. It sounds like California has a massive population. What kind of weird number game is this? This guy's from Indiana? Lord have mercy. I grew up in Indiana, Northwest Indiana.
And take advantage of Medicaid and Medicare in these programs that are really meant, again, for all Americans, not just for those in California or New York that are taking advantage of programs or expanding the programs. But, you know, coming from a rural area, this is a really important issue for me because I see how the cost of health care has gone up. President Trump, again, I believe is the right person to fix this. He's already addressed it on prescriptions where he's capped prices. I think we're going to see more of those sorts of conversations where if the healthcare industry doesn't fix these problems in getting the cost of healthcare down, that government and specifically President Trump's going to step in and fix it. And I think we need to.
Trump's going to step in and fix it. I feel better.
No longer a free market industry. It's very much a manipulated and controlled by government pricing and reimbursement rates.
I do just want to point out, for the sake of precision, Congressman, that California is the 5th largest economy, I believe, in the world, and so they contribute enormously to the revenue that the federal government creates by the form of taxes.
That's basically exactly what I just pointed out, right? I pointed it out. I paused it to point this out, but how are you going to compare California with the largest population and then compare it to Florida and say that's a win, but just by throwing out numbers, it's misleading. Again, any person who is like aware of business understands ROI. And here's the perfect example right here. Let's go to our notes because I love this. Let's look at USAID. Whoa, USAID. Let's say that it costs $63 billion per year. I don't know if that's the exact figure. Let me look it up. Okay, it was 58 billion. I was 5 off. Either way, the point stands. Let's say it costs $58 billion per year. You can see at the bottom of the screen. But when you cut it, it leads to 3 new diseases, 14 million deaths, and lower economic productivity in allied countries. This leads to a loss of $192 billion in economic productivity. It leads to disease. Obviously, the 192 billion is made up, but the 14 million deaths is not made up. The point here is, when you cut U.S. aid, you are lowering economic productivity. You are causing disease. It's just simple, like math that I feel like MAGA refuses to do. Ro Khanna says, I don't think it's very patriotic to kick 17 million Americans off of Medicaid so billionaires can get more tax cuts. We were reading a really good study from the Commonwealth Fund, which is a nonpartisan group. The impact on state economies would be greater than the loss of federal Medicaid funding. This is because the ripple effect of these cuts across the sectors of each state's economy. We estimate that collectively, states' GDPs would be about $95 billion smaller, and the total economic output loss would be even deeper, $157 billion. The average state's reduction in its GDP for 2026 would be $1.9 billion. Nationwide, about 880,000 jobs would be lost in 2026, including 477,000 healthcare jobs at hospitals, clinics, doctors' offices, pharmacies, and nursing homes. Wait a minute, though. Wait a minute. Trump is putting on genius tariffs that will reshore all the manufacturing, right? He's cutting 90 deals in 90 days, right? Lord have mercy. Obviously, I say that in jest. Michael Madsen has passed away at the age of 67. JD Vance says, GOP congressman just texted me, quote, I was undecided on the bill, but then I watched Hakeem Jeffries' performance. Now I'm a firm yes. AOC said, was it Representative Garbarino? After all, he fell asleep and conveniently missed the first vote on this bill. Did he just wake up and decide to throw Long Island families off their health care because a speech by a Democrat made him sad? Ken Martin made a statement, the DNC chair. Today, Donald Trump and the Republican Party sent a message to America. If you're not a billionaire, we don't give a damn about you. Healthcare, basic food benefits, dignity, and old age. These are the values that Republicans have abandoned to give their billionaire friends another tax handout. By the way, we almost have 1,000 people live on the Substack. If you're watching the Substack live, we're going to be doing some great content lately. You can become a free or paid subscriber below. We've been doing daily newsletter posts. It's been some good stuff. DNC Chair Ken Martin then says, healthcare, basic food benefits, dignity, and old age. These are the values that Republicans have abandoned to give their billionaire friends another tax handout. The massive scheme to steal from working families, children, and seniors will devastate communities in blue and red states. He continues, but honestly, I was going to spend this live stream going through this entire notepad and making sure that we had everything written down, but we've only gotten through the Medicaid cuts, and we've been so stunned by the loss of life that will be caused that we haven't even gotten to the economic harm or the cuts to SNAP. Sierra, thank you for becoming a member below. You can either become a member on the Mockler channel or a member of the Substack. Dixon says, I once saw Representative Scalise in public and almost told him to F himself. Like Trump, I chickened out. One of life's biggest regrets. Sometimes when you're there in person, it's hard to disrupt somebody's day. It's easier to think about doing it, but once you see somebody standing with like their wife, you're like, I don't want to go yell at this person, even if they deserve it. Let's continue scrolling through Twitter. See, this is why conservatives... So Olivia Giuliana said, Hillary Clinton wasn't mean enough when she called y'all deplorable. Someone said, are you mad? You big mad? I've seen people in chat doing the same thing. Like, are you mad at him? Not really mad, but it's just like kind of disappointing. Am I mad that 17 million people could lose their health care? Yeah, kind of disappointed about it. Why aren't you more mad? Why would I not be mad that 17 million people just lost their health care? Could you imagine just being chill about it? Pete Buttigieg.
That the House has passed the mega bill after it got through the Republican Senate. Now it's on its way to President Trump's desk, and he's going to sign it. When he does, he will create some of the biggest tax breaks for billionaires in history, transferring even more wealth to the wealthiest Americans. And the way they're paying for it is to cut health care for working class Americans, to cut food that would go to veterans and children in this country, to shut down rural hospitals and make an entire generation worse off. And they're managing to increase the national debt and deficit while they do it. This is the decisive once-and-for-all answer to what this president and his party are about. You know, it was fashionable for Washington commentators for a while to say that this was a new, different, populist, working-class Republican Party. Now, it has been demonstrated decisively that that was all bullshit, that they're still all about making the wealthy even wealthier at the expense of working Americans. If there's any good news in all this, it's that this is still a democracy. Even now, even with all of the damage that Donald Trump has done to our republic, there is no king in this country, which means we, the people, will have the last word. And it is up to us, the American people, to respond politically and say that it is unacceptable to harm the majority of Americans to make the very wealthiest a little better off.
Like the king said, that if you can't fly.
My bad. I turned down my volume for 1 second. Here's Hakeem Jeffries speaking, filibustering basically in a similar way as Cory Booker.
We've got to press on. Like the king said, that if you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But at all times, press on.
Yep, Pete Buttigieg had a really good point too. I really liked everything Pete was saying. I interviewed him a few months back, and he is truly one of my favorites. I have one question for you all. Are you ready for what we're about to build with Mockler Media? Have you guys heard about Mockler Media yet? What we're building? Essentially, someone in chat said crybabies. There's no way you can call any Democrats crybabies. Remember what happened when you guys lost the 2020 election? You guys were like crying, pissing, and shitting yourselves at the Capitol. Okay. Hell yes. Okay. Someone in chat said, no, tell me more. This is a perfect time to inform you guys on Mockler Media. I made the channel that you're watching now, the Adam Mockler channel. I made that when I was 9 years old. I learned to edit when I was 7 years old. I would learn to edit over and over. Now we are building a media empire. And what we're going to do is have a digital first movement injected into your feed. What that means is whenever breaking news comes out, it's going to be in your feed. We're going to be punching back against MAGA with a bunch of Gen Z contributors. So Chris, Aria will all be contributing, and we're starting a live show tomorrow or the next day. I don't want to give an exact date, but it should be July 4th. Think about this. It's going to be a show with Chris and I going live. And then after that show, we're going to do a MAGA debate show. We're going to do call-ins. You guys can call in. We're going to be doing all of this live. And just imagine this. Chris and I sitting next to each other at a table. We have two Trump supporters on the other side. And we're debating about the bill live as it happens. Mockler Media is going to be a digital-first company that changes the way media work. Hopefully. It's ambitious, but we're hoping that the era of mainstream media hosting debates and panels will then transfer to this new era of digital media. So it's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. We want merch. Oh, the Mockler Media merch we're working on is beautiful. It is beautiful. Just stay tuned. Write down Mockler Media somewhere in your notes, and just remember, Chris Mowry will be a part of it. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Subscribe. Be ready. Subscribe to the Substack right here. I'm going to spam it a few times. The Substack is a newsletter where you'll find all of the breaking news about Mockler Media, and it'll help us communicate with you guys. Right there. Go to adammockler.com. Oops, you can't click that. Go to adammockler.com. I love you all. I'll see you in the next stream. AdamMockler.com to learn more. Let's rip this. Click this link in chat. Love you guys. Peace out.